DC has definitely seen its criticism, right? I mean, of course, decades in the comic business will do that for you, but movie-wise, they're mostly known to be lost these days. A few good movies, but a lot of bad ones too. Couple that with one of the most rabid fan bases around. In this series of videos, we'll focus entirely on DC movies that hit theaters. Because there's a lot of complications from just that guideline, I'll be upfront in saying this won't include the serials. I'd rather focus on feature-length movies. Also, any straight-to-video DC movies like The Killing Joke, for example, which did have a theatrical event, won't count, because it'd make this all the more confusing. If you want me to cover any of that stuff, let me know. Maybe after I finish my run on
DC Movie Mania,
I'll consider doing those movies, but right now I'm mainly focusing on theatrical DC movies that were intended to be theatrical DC movies. Now, with anything that's gone on for years, you're bound to find, let's say, eras, and you can definitely fit some DC films with eras. Sure, DC wasn't exactly behind the films until most recently, but given how the film business works, there's certainly a sort of structure you can make out of the movies made. Granted, what helps these early years is that there was a major franchise made out of one of DC's heroes. Yes, Superman. So many Superman films. Which is why I dubbed these early years as the Superman era of DC films. So what better place to start out our analysis of DC films than
the 1966 Batman.
The first official movie made from a DC comic, Batman, or as it's mostly known, Batman the Movie, was a feature-length film made to coincide with the TV series. Adam West plays the iconic role that would make Batman a household name. The show itself is a classic. Goofy at times, sure, but charming, and to say it didn't reflect the comics of the time is a lie so many Bat fans have told themselves, just to feel like their hero wasn't a joke. Thankfully, a lot's changed over the years and people respect this show a lot more now. This movie is certainly a nice place to start with DC movies, not just because of the goofy charm, but because it represents the optimism and hope that was found in comics. Sure, some moments are a bit much, like Batman with the bomb, the shark, and the detective work.
But wait, it happened at sea. See? See for Catwoman.
But let's be honest, they've all become iconic moments for the character and show us the lighthearted escapism that could be found at this time, and is honestly sorely missing from newer versions.
Some days you just can't get rid of a bomb.
Superman.
And now we get the grand start. Batman was the appetizer, but this felt like nothing that came before. It set the standard for future superhero features and helped redefine cinema at the time. Superman the Movie is by no means a perfect film, especially with what's been made since, but a world without this is a world I'd rather not imagine. It's not just a good translation of page to screen. What makes this great is that you can tell the people making it didn't just want to make some superhero film. They wanted to make the defining Superman movie. The kind of thing audiences would look at and immediately see as a default for Superman. In essence, this feels like an epic movie, a larger-than-life movie. It was proof that characters from silly comics could be cinematic greats. All the more impressive is that there were so many ways this could have gone wrong, yet a classic was made that looms large over the superhero movies made since.
Superman 2.
Superman 2, on the other hand, well, it's a good movie, don't get me wrong, but it's never been a great one. Of course, I'm specifically talking about the theatrical version here, but even the superior Richard Donner cut is not great, though that may be because of the limitations with how it was made. Anyway, back to theatrical Superman 2. It ends up having a goofier tone than its predecessor, thanks to a different director, and while it still has some solid stuff like Zod, the movie just can't recapture the epic feel of the original, and ends up feeling more like a standard superhero movie rather than something special. Key among the problems is the slapstick stuff that's often been criticized, the silly powers that Superman has this time, and even the creepy powers he has this time. Yeah, that kiss is still weird. But even taking that out, it just doesn't measure up to what made the first movie so amazing and special. It's still good, but just not the defining masterpiece the original was. Taking a break from Superman, we get Swamp Thing of all characters. I don't know, was he that popular at the time? Or did an exec really like him? It doesn't matter. What matters is how this fares as a movie, and honestly, not very well. I know this movie has some fans. I do like that they were going for a horror vibe, and it sometimes feels like a very tame exploitation movie, but long stretches of it are boring. Certainly, some effort went into this, however low budget it was, but there's not enough scares, body horror, or interesting creatures to make this a worthwhile dive. That it's forgotten by many is no surprise, and while it didn't need to be as hopeful as the previous three movies, it did need some of the energy that went into those projects. It's a bad movie, not the worst, but among them for DC in general.
Superman 3.
This time is going to be the best time of all.
So, many people believe that this movie is the result of much more drama than what was actually there. Margaret Kidder is barely in the movie, Gene Hackman is nowhere to be seen, and some believe it's all on the cast being mad over the change in the creative team. Truth is, they were trying new story ideas. Some actors were busy, and the crew just decided to focus more on Superman's hometown. Well, okay, there's more to it than that, but I'm mainly here to talk about the movie, which is bad. Richard Pryor finds himself in this movie quite a bit, and none of the material he's given is all that good.
Let me tell you something. I can't ski!
But then he falls.
I suppose his arc as a working man down in his luck, accidentally becoming an asset to destroy Superman, is supposed to be hopeful and inspiring as redemption arcs, but it's not funny or interesting. I mean, I can at least give him some points. He is trying. It just doesn't work in this. I don't know, he probably would have fared better if it was in his own movie, but yeah, it just doesn't work. Taking that out of the equation, what's left is still a silly mess that lacks the stuff that worked before. With the only highlight being Superman going evil and eventually fighting himself, it's weird, but at least it's well done, and I could see a good movie based on Superman becoming a hopeless mess and then trying to be inspiring. Oh well.
Supergirl.
Well, forget the man, get the cousin, and push that girl power. I actually don't. Here's another mess of a movie. It tries, I'll give it that. But if it weren't for the fact that this is connected to the Superman mythos, one would assume this is a lazy studio knockoff of Superman, just with less epic material. This isn't to say that the movie is a ripoff of Superman, but you can feel it's trying to angle itself as the grand adventure in the same vein. It's mostly boring. While I appreciate Faye Dunaway as the villain being some selfish, greedy, even kinda horny, which she's still not a great villain, just more enjoyable than Superman 3's lazy villain. Of course, one of the biggest issues with this one is that the story is all over the place with some strange editing choices, and it does feel weird seeing a movie where no one has issues with grown adult men dating teens. Ugh.
Superman 4, The Quest for Peace.
And the Superman run ends with a dumb, desperate whimper. That it started with an epic is honestly depressing to see that the story ends with this. So, the cast is mostly back, but you can tell Gene Hackman no longer cares. The movie may not have as much slapstick as prior entries, but we do have some hacky joke scenes like Superman getting interviewed by Lois while getting ready to date another woman both in the same spot at the same time. Yeah, that old sitcom plot line. There's an anti-nuke message that's barely there. The villain is ridiculous. No one wants to be in this. Trust me, it's very clear that that's true. Honestly, the most charming thing in this one is that Jon Cryer plays Lex Luthor's nephew. Mostly because it's now funny seeing how he's currently playing Lex Luthor. This one's bad because it lacks the energy that was once in the series, and if it weren't for the cast, you'd assume this was a cheap TV special given the lousy messaging paired with a really cheap budget. Honestly, it's just sad looking at this and then thinking, wow, this started with Superman the movie.
The Return of Swamp Thing.
Just before we hit the next stage of DC features, we have one more Swamp Thing movie. This time, it's far campier, cheesier, and honestly, more fun. It's not great, mind you. I think the horror vibe the first one was going for was better suited for the material, but at least this one did keep my attention. It's sillier and mostly ignores that first film, so it's fair to watch it without seeing the first movie, and on top of that, it's definitely a more hopeful movie in terms of approach, making it closer to the rest of the movies on this list than the predecessor. After all the duds post-Superman 2, this was a welcome way to end this section of DC movies. It's just a silly romp that never takes itself seriously, which sure might be a turnoff for some fans, but I'll take enjoyment over reverence any day. Trust me, if I have a good time with it, it doesn't matter how inaccurate it is. Alright, now let's close this off. Look, to say DC has had a perfect start to their movies would be a lie. Most of these movies are various degrees of bad, but the bright spots are there. There's some fun to be had, and a lot of boredom to be had. Like I said at the start, realistically there's no true connection with all these movies, beyond a majority being Superman movies, but you can see just how similar some approaches were to the characters. Namely, the lighthearted, goofy optimism being put, because hey, that's what superheroes were to people for a long time, and it was for a lot of the adults at the time. I'm not gonna lie, I originally was gonna go all the way up to all the 90s movies as well, that way it'd end right at the start of the new century, but considering how after this it would largely be Batman features, I figured they could use their own focus. So join me sometime soon, not the next video, maybe not at the one after that, but sometime soon, as I'll continue this series with the Batman era of DC movies.
You're going to go down in history as the man who killed Superman.